I went in ready to be critical, prepared to poke holes, call out every marketing trick, and walk away convinced the whole motorhome craze was overrated. Instead, this vehicle did something I didn't expect. It changed my mind. Over the next half hour, I'm going to take you through everything that flipped my opinion. The surprises, the disappointments, the real-world tests, and the one question you care about most. Should you consider this motorhome for your next trip or even full-time life on the road? When I first saw the listing, I thought it was another glossy ad. The photos were perfect, the spec sheet impressive, and the influencers loved it. But I've learned to be suspicious of perfection. Beautiful photos hide tiny compromises that become huge annoyances on a weekend away. So I rented it, lived in it, cooked in it, drove it for hundreds of miles, and treated it like a real home for a few days. What follows is the full breakdown. Honest, practical, and focused on what actually matters once the lights go off and you were 4 hours from the nearest town. Let's start with first impressions, because they matter more than we admit. From a distance, this motorhome looks premium, clean lines, a tasteful two-tone palette, and LED accents that give it a modern edge. Up close, the paint and seam work felt solid. There were no obvious shortcuts. That was promising, but it's only stage one. The real test is how it holds up when you're living inside it. Stepping inside changed the tone immediately. The interior layout is clever. Space in a motorhome is currency, and this one spends it wisely. There are design choices that feel thoughtful rather than trendy. A slightly raised bed for better storage, windows placed to maximize cross-ventilation, and a kitchen layout that keeps everything within reach without feeling boxed in. The materials struck a balance, not show-home luxury, but durable and pleasing. Kitchen performance is where opinions usually diverge. For me, a motorhome kitchen needs to handle more than coffee and instant noodles. I cooked a full breakfast, a heavy pasta dinner, and a quick campfire-style lunch for 4. The induction hob heated fast, the oven was surprisingly capable, and the fridge handled a week's worth of groceries without sweating. Counter space is always limited, but the clever folding counter extension in the pull-out prep area made cooking realistic instead of a compromise. If you love food and you want to cook while traveling, this motorhome was a pleasant surprise. Sleep is a non-negotiable part of comfort. The mattress here wasn't a gimmick. It was supportive with good edge support, and the bed placement allowed for circulation and small bedside storage. I slept through the night both in a noisy campground and in a windy roadside rest area. The blackout blinds and the ventilation fan combined to keep things comfortable. For people who worry that motorhome beds feel like plywood, this particular setup should ease that anxiety. Bathrooms are often the most revealing room. In this model, the shower had proper water pressure and decent headroom, and the drainage was efficient, no standing water. The fixtures were solid, and the materials resisted staining even after several quick cleanups. Small touches like a secure toilet roll holder, a clothes hook, and a shelf for toiletries made daily use practical instead of frustrating. For anyone planning extended trips, this bathroom will feel usable rather than merely tolerable. Driving the motorhome surprised me in a different way. I expected the usual wallow and wind complaint common to larger RVs, but this one handled crosswinds and highway speeds with rare composure. The steering felt stable, and the suspension absorbed rough patches well. The diesel engine offered good mid-range torque for climbs, and overtaking was confident rather than nerve-wracking. Fuel consumption was respectable for its class, not miraculous, but efficient enough that long-range travel didn't feel prohibitively expensive. If you're someone who hates the idea of driving a truck, this one felt closer to driving a large van than a lumbering coach. Technology in motorhomes is a double-edged sword. It makes life easier when it works and multiplies headaches when it doesn't. The control system here leaned toward reliability. The touchscreen was responsive, the app connectivity worked as advertised most of the time, and the monitoring suite for tanks and battery was clear and helpful. I did notice one glitch during a firmware update that temporarily stalled the interface, but a reboot fixed it. That kind of hiccup is annoying, but fixable, and the bulk of the system performed well over several days. Storage is where many motorhomes fall apart, but this one surprised me again. The designers clearly prioritized usable volume. Underbed storage was deep and accessible without wrestling. Exterior lockers were wide enough for folding chairs and tools, and internal shelving made it simple to keep the living area uncluttered. Instead of hiding awkward cavities behind panels, the storage felt organized. That matters because a tidy motorhome is a livable motorhome. I packed for a week for 2 adults and still had room for extras. Off-grid capability is a topic that separates weekend warriors from true nomads. The solar setup and battery bank here are solid mid-range. You'll get several days of low to moderate usage off-grid lights, fans, a few hours of laptop work, and light cooking. Heavy usage like air conditioning or prolonged AC appliance use will drain things faster, so plan accordingly. The water tanks were decent for a few days without hookups, and the gray-black tank sizes are practical for typical remote stays. If you want month-long off-grid freedom without refills, you'll need larger capacity or a more conservative usage plan. Maintenance and build quality. This is where the manufacturer earns or loses trust. The construction felt robust, metal hinges, good sealant work, and thoughtful placement of service access panels. I checked under panels that often hide poor wiring or plumbing, and the layout was sensible with labeled lines. Repairs won't be trivial, but they appeared accessible. That lowers the intimidation factor when something inevitably needs attention. But nothing is flawless. There were compromises. The dinette table locking mechanism felt a little light. On rough roads, the table flexed more than I'd like. A couple of plastic trims in high-touch areas felt cheaper than the rest of the build. And while interior insulation was decent, it wasn't stellar. In very cold or very hot extremes, you'd want an additional layer of insulation or a more aggressive HVAC strategy. None of these are deal breakers for most people, but they're worth noting. Let's talk cost, not because price tags alone decide everything, but because they reveal expectations. This model sits in a mid to upper pricing band. You're paying for better design, better materials, and the peace of mind that comes with a thoughtful layout. If your budget is tight, you can still get on the road for less, but you'll likely sacrifice some of the real comforts that make longer trips enjoyable. Conversely, if budget isn't a constraint, there are higher-end coach options with marble counters and full-size appliances, but they add weight and maintenance complexity. For the majority of buyers, this motorhome hits a practical sweet spot. A big part of why it changed my mind was how it handled real-life scenarios. I did a rainy day test, and the interior stayed dry, with no weird leaks or condensation buildup. I did an overnight test at a noisy rest area, and soundproofing kept things quiet enough to sleep. I did a highway endurance drive, and the driver comfort features, lumbar support, mirror positioning, and cruise control made a long day manageable. When you multiply these small wins, the overall experience shifts from fine to actually enjoyable. Resale and long-term ownership matter. This model comes from a brand that has decent resale value and a good service network. That reduces the risk if you decide to sell in a few years. Parts availability looked reasonable based on service catalogs, and the modular layout means repairs are less invasive. If you like to upgrade or customize, this platform is friendly to aftermarket improvements. Now let's dig into the emotional side of motorhome ownership because it's real, and it influences decisions more than we admit. On paper, a vehicle can look perfect and still leave you unsatisfied. This one, however, gave me tangible moments of joy, brewing morning coffee with a sunrise view, the space to cook and actually enjoy a meal, and that sense of privacy and comfort after a long day on the road. These moments are small, but they pile up into a lifestyle. I found myself wanting to extend the trip, not count down the hours until I could stop. That said, suitability is personal. If your vision of travel is hardcore overlanding through rough, unmaintained tracks, a lighter, more rugged camper conversion might be better. If you prefer luxury resorts on wheels with chandeliers, there are premium coaches that cater to that taste. This motorhome sits between those extremes, comfortable, reliable, and designed for real travel without pretension. Before I close, let's talk about one common question. Would I buy it? The honest answer is yes, with a few conditions. I'd opt for the configuration with the upgraded water tanks and the reinforced table locking mechanism, and I'd budget for a few small customizations, better insulation for extreme climates, and an extra swell of battery capacity for longer off-grid stays. With those tweaks, this becomes a near-perfect platform for long-term travel. If you're watching this because you want a realistic motorhome that supports long weekends, seasonal travel, or even full-time living with sensible upgrades, this model deserves a serious look. It isn't perfect, but it's practical, thoughtfully built, and designed with the owner's day-to-day life in mind. If you want more details, like a full parts list, specific upgrade links, or a walkthrough of my packing list for a 2-week trip in this motorhome, let me know in the comments. I'll make a companion video with step-by-step gear, the tiny hacks I use to maximize space, and the exact upgrades I recommend. And if you found this deep dive helpful, do me a quick favor, hit subscribe so you don't miss the follow-up where I test those upgrades in the field. Like the video if you learned something, and share it with someone who's thinking about buying their first motorhome. Those small actions really help me keep making honest, practical reviews without sponsorship bias. At the end of the day, this motorhome changed my mind, because it turned vague promises into real, repeatable comfort. It didn't do anything mystical. No magic tricks, just good engineering, thoughtful design, and realistic compromises. If you buy one, plan for small upgrades, expect occasional maintenance, and treat it like a home on wheels rather than a temporary toy. Do that, and it rewards you with a freedom that's hard to explain but easy to love. Thanks for listening through the full breakdown. If you want that packing list or the upgrade guide next, say the word below and I'll get it ready. Safe travels, and I'll see you in the next review.